Hello and welcome to Mothman's Bookshop. My name is Nicole, and today I'd like to tell you about Flounder by Zachary Downing. Warning, I'll try and make this as spoiler-free as possible, but given it's a book review, there are bound to be a couple spoilers. Make sure to stick around for an exclusive author interview. So this author actually reached out to me on Instagram to ask if I could review his book, and I could not be more honored to write and record this episode for y'all today. As I've said before, if anyone would like to send in a short story or book for the podcast or some casual critique, my email is in the description at woolyshen@gmail.com, or you can always contact me via Instagram at mothmansbookpod, also in my linktree in the description. This book was more in a realistic/college fiction genre and can be very relatable to many current college students, or those who just graduated and are looking back on their college experience, both in and outside of school. I've linked the Amazon link to the book in the description for anyone interested in reading it. For this week's summary, Zach was kind enough to provide us with a synopsis of his book.
Alex Rybeck is adamant that he won't end up like his deadbeat older brother Jerry. He's wrapping up high school well enough, but his parents still give him a college ultimatum: maintain a 3.0 GPA or lose all financial support, following in Jerry's footsteps. Now thrust into higher education, Alex discovers that keeping on top of his grades while navigating his social life is no easy task. And when one unsympathetic professor forces that 3.0 GPA to slip out of reach, he figures, what's the point? Shouldn't he just go crazy partying until the music stops? Sputtering through a turbulent year containing pointless classes, girlfriends, way too much weed, an illegitimate yearbook superlative, a weapon at a house party, a laundry room confrontation, and a campus-wide drinking scavenger hunt, Alex must ultimately determine whether he'll let a few blunders condemn him to be a loser forever, or if he's willing to persevere and overcome his mistakes.
Now, let's get into the review. Even the summary immediately intrigued me when I initially read it, so while I didn't raise my expectations too much, I was still looking forward to reading the book. Very slight spoilers, but I loved the laundry confrontation sort of enemies to lovers arc. I thought it was really well done and very fun to watch. Alex is sort of a universal character in that different aspects of him can be relatable to a lot of very different people, such as his struggles with drug abuse throughout his college career, as well as, the partying and the social aspects, as well as the low grades and low motivation part, because especially that part is very difficult for a lot of people. Maintaining high grades and maintaining the motivation to keep going and keep doing your schoolwork is very difficult, especially when you have to reach these expectations set for you by teachers and parents and peers. So I've experienced that, and I know a lot of people have experienced that also, which is what makes Alex so relatable, is that you can see yourself in him throughout. I will say that the book started off a little bit slow or a little bit weaker, but it really picked up around the summer section and the beginning of his college year. But I think that's a problem with a lot of books, even very experienced writers, so I'm not super stuck up on that. Now, I'm not sure if this was an intentional choice, but if it was, I really feel like this deserves the highest praise because it makes the book so much more three-dimensional. The writing in each section, or almost each chapter, really reflects Alex's perception of that period in his life. Like, the end of his senior year felt really slow, kind of boring, kind of sad, but also a bit exciting because you're finishing high school. It's a big change in your life. The summer felt quick because Zach didn't dwell too much on it, because, summer always flies by and then boom, you're back in school. And college felt a little bit all over the place because it really was for Alex. He was doing a lot of things and kind of either passing his classes or failing his classes, and then all of a sudden the ending is here, the end of the year is here, and that was conveyed really well in Zach's writing because you can really envision Alex rushing to finish his assignments and his exams and get some kind of passing grade. A couple times throughout the book, I noticed that some of the sentences feel like they should have gone in a different order, like one might have been a little bit strange, as if it should have gone before the first one. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it's just a little thing that I noticed. And finally, the ending works really well because instead of feeling cramped or rushed like in other books, Lost Apothecary, it works to convey that feeling of urgency that, again, Alex is feeling when he has to make up a bunch of work to pass and not fail out of college at the end of the semester. Now, as you might have guessed by now, I was able to talk directly to the author while reading and writing the script, and he has so kindly agreed to an interview. I'd like to welcome today's special guest, Zachary Downing.
Hey, how are you? This is Zach Downing. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I attended SUNY Geneseo. I've always written stories and songs as a hobby, but Flounder is my first novel.
Wow.
Yes. One of my favorite genres is the campus novel, where the setting is college. And this just so happens to be where my novel takes place.
Awesome. I think we should get right into the questions. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Awesome. So our first question comes from Hey Meg Calvin on Instagram, asking, did you write Flounder quicker than usual or in spite of COVID?
I began writing Flounder before COVID, but quarantine definitely helped me become more disciplined. It was definitely an after work, before dinner, 500 words a day, discipline, pretty routine.
So by discipline, you mean it just kind of forced you to have this routine so you could finish it and just get the novel out?
Yes, just start the process, get my first draft done.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to the next question from Allie Downing on Instagram. What does Alex's life look like 5 years after the book ends, 10 years?
Yeah, I think I know her. By the end of the book, I think my main character, Alex, has come a long way, but I still think he would face some struggles in the coming years. If he ever studied abroad in college, I'm not so sure that would go so smoothly.
Why not?
I just think that it's a new challenge, new country. As for his 20s, I think, like everyone, he would have evolving relationships with his family and friends. In some good ways, maybe and also in some bad ways.
Got it. Thank you. Now, we have a final listener submitted question from Foggy D asking, what made Zach want to write about this particular theme, and how did I find it as somebody with a phase of education still ahead of them?
I would say the main theme of Flounder is competency. I basically wanted to write the college version of The Little Engine That Could. I always thought that books, movies, and TV shows never really showed the stress, anxiety aspect of school. And I wanted to explore that because it's such a genuine concern or reality for students.
Absolutely.
And I just knew I had to make it interesting and fun. Competency can be a difficult theme to convey because it's not necessarily a moral choice, but I do feel that being good at something or being good enough carries like an all-encompassing ethic. I tried to show Alex, my protagonist, not only striving to be a good student at school, but also being a good child to his parents, a good sibling, a good friend, a good significant other, and also good to himself.
And I think that's something that's really unique in your book, because even in movies, I think a lot of them either only focus on the social aspect or only focus on the academic aspect. So seeing you combine those two elements is really unique to just this book as far as I've seen.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah. So what is the story behind the title Flounder?
I chose the title Flounder because it represented my character, Alex, struggling or stumbling, sputtering at this particular point of his life, his freshman year. But it also has a slightly funny feel. I also felt, because the book is an early adulthood journey, a nautical word, it might help evoke that, like the Odyssey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, part of the climax has a particular fish connection, but I won't reveal anything more than that.
Nice, awesome. Do you have a favorite or just any authors that kind of really impacted your writing style?
Some of my favorite writers would be Nick Hornby, Frank McCourt, and Walt Whitman. Nick Hornby is a favorite of many, and he's particularly good at writing everyday average people, but with a great significance in the everyday. Frank McCourt's autobiographies perfectly encapsulate perseverance, or as he would put it, doggedness. And Walt Whitman writes about the beauty of life, the universe, nature, the individual on such an unmatched level. He's great inspiration whenever your book calls for a poetic aspect.
I definitely see that poetic aspect in your writing and in your book, and the influence of Nick Hornby with the writing everyday average people, as you said, because it really does come across as a very casual, personal biography that Alex Rybeck tells. Do you ever feel stuck while writing, and how did you deal with writer's block, or do you have any tips to share with others struggling with writer's block?
I often have a general idea that might be marinating for years, and then I begin planning it, plotting it, once I feel there's a significant story there. Once I begin writing, I do that 500 words a day, try to do that 5 times a week. It's a snail's pace, but it's doable for me.
It may be doable for you, but I don't understand how. I struggle to write 500 words a month. I don't know how you did it a day 5 times a week.
Yeah, just those steps, idea, plotting it out. And you could always get rid of stuff on the back end. So I usually don't get stuck. And at dinner, I'm hypothesizing the next day's scene. And then if I do get stuck, I'll just write a couple hundred words and then try to fill up that deficit. The one funny particular issue I had was writing party scenes.
Really?
In movies, party scenes are instantly fun because you have the blaring music, the slow motion, and everyone else there is happy to see you. But it's so much more difficult to demonstrate that through the written word. So to get over this, I started asking friends, what makes a party fun? And people looked at me like I had 2 heads when I asked that. But I realized the real question I was asking is, what separates a good party story from a you had to be there story? So once I realized that was the question I needed to overcome, it helped me a ton.
I really do see that in the party scenes you wrote, because while I was reading them, it did feel like I was watching a movie in my head, because they perfectly kind of captured that essence of what movie party scenes are, with the music and him going to a bedroom to smoke weed or whatever it was. It really did feel like a good, fun party that was happening.
No, thank you so much. Yeah. Hopefully you felt like you were there.
I really did. Was any part of the book inspired by your life or any personal experiences you've had?
My novel wasn't directly inspired by my life, but I did go away to college in 2006, like my protagonist, Alex. I chose 2006 because I knew the time well. It allowed for an interesting technology constraint. There were cell phones, but no smartphones.
Yeah.
And particularly the 2007 Super Bowl worked well with my plot. And I also wanted to show a character going from the end of high school to the end of his freshman year of college, because it's such a transient time where you live in different places and meet different people. I can say that I definitely experienced the school stress aspect, like not understanding a lecture and bombing an essay that you thought you did well on. So that would probably be the closest it was to me.
I completely understand that, because I was in a program for a while at school, so I know what college is like and how it works. And I definitely understand that feeling of, I think I did well on this test, and then you get your grade and you did so bad and you're disappointed in yourself.
Yeah.
But about the time zone, it was kind of funny, because I expected it to be in the 2020 or late 2010s, and then I see them mention Blackberries and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not fitting.
Yeah, I tried to make a couple of music and TV show references in the beginning.
Yeah.
That kind of set you back a couple of years. But yes, that's if anything, it's a salute to students kind of taking it all on. because I understand how, high stakes an academic semester can be. Sometimes it comes down to one semester, one class, one test can really have an effect on your future.
Yeah, it can be a lot of pressure to keep achieving high grades and high GPAs all the time. And one last thing, what was your favorite part of the writing process?
My favorite part of the writing process would be writing setup and payoff scenes. Long form storytelling is great for teasing something that readers remember but don't necessarily have on the forefront of their mind, and then rewarding them with a follow-up connection later in the book. It's something that I appreciate and I strive for, although it does require a little bit of planning.
And not a lot of authors can achieve that, so to see that done very well in your first book really says something about who you are as a writer, and I can't wait to see what you write next. Alright, thank you so much, Zach, for coming on, for letting me do this interview. Feel free to tell the listeners where we can find you.
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Zachary Downing Writes. That's the @ symbol, ZACHARY_DOWNING_WRITES. And check out my website, zdowning.com. That's zdowning.com.
Got it. Thank you. Final thoughts? I think the writing and structure of the book could use a bit of polishing, but other than that, it really did have some poetic undertones like we mentioned just now. It was a really accurate representation of college life and mental health for a lot of people, and I definitely recommend it to anyone going into college, especially anyone worried about maintaining expectations. I can't wait to see what Zach writes next. This book, I think, gets a 4 out of 5 from me. Once again, I've linked his book in the description, and if any authors would like to reach out, my email and social media are in the description as well. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Mothman's Bookshop. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. If you did and would like to know when the next episode comes out, do yourself a favor and follow the podcast. And if you have any questions or recommendations, feel free to use the form in the description or join the Discord. Once again, my name is Nicole, and I'll see you next week here in Mothman's Bookshop.